The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, a podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards the
most radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on the Spin-off or wherever you get your podcasts.
A power pod.
No, I don't want to do the trumpet. I was too quiet last time.
You weren't too quiet.
Toby was way louder than me.
It's not true.
This is all just a flex by Toby.
I told you what to do, so trumpet then.
Tēnā koutou katoa, this is Gone By Lunchtime. My name is Toby Manhire, and we are back on a Thursday this week. It's Thursday morning. I believe it's the 1st of October. So white rabbits, as my grandmother would say. The debate number 2 was held last night, the Newshub debate, so we'll get into that.
There's been a bit of controversy that some parts of the electorate haven't been well represented in the debates.
That's Ben Thomas.
That we've been hearing mainly from the middle classes, the people who are privileged, the people who have voices, not really from those who are, coming out of the current crisis in New Zealand, the worst, the people who are really bearing the brunt of societal harm, which is why we have Annabelle Lee Mather and Mihingarangi Forbes.
Yes. You've just completely walked all over my intro,
yeah,
Ben.
You
sorry.
You carry on.
I feel like we should start over.
No,
sorry.
It's fine. No, well, no, we've started now, so we'll finish.
Toby, carry on.
I'd like to thank, from the bottom of my heart, Flick Electric for paying the bills, and Spin-off members for keeping us alive as a ongoing media organisation, which is good. Big shout out, before I introduce you to our guest, to Caleb, whose birthday it was, and who got a Spin-off Gone By Lunchtime tea towel.
Oh, Caleb, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Caleb.
No whānau, kia koe.
And a big apology, I forgot to shout out last week to the bad boys of Brexit. So I'm really, really sorry, guys. Still thinking of you guys a lot. Thank you for your mahi. Today on the podcast, we have Ben Thomas, who you know. We have Annabelle Lee Mather, who you know.
Talofa.
And we have a very special guest. We have Mihingarangi Forbes.
Kia ora.
From the Hui and the RNZ podcast Party People.
Thank you, kia ora, and talofa. I too have a Samoan husband.
Well, congratulations. You were on the debate panel last night. We're going to talk about that in a second. We're also going to talk about the latest polling. Maybe we'll talk a bit about the Māori seats, because you guys have hosted several hundred debates in the last few weeks on that front. We're also going to talk about New Zealand First, and then the final subject we'll talk about, which is completely separate to New Zealand First, is we'll talk about the New Zealand First Foundation. Just want to be really clear that those are completely different subjects.
Names.
Probably make it 2 different podcasts. Just to clear up any confusion.
What we'll do is we'll have a clap in between.
That's right. And then we'll all sort of suddenly speak in French.
Yeah.
Just to
some trumpets.
Trumpets?
Yeah.
Mini trumpets. Mihi, it was a good debate last night, do you think?
Really enjoyed it. Thought good subjects. Probably not enough for the young people. I keep thinking, because my daughter, it's totally because my daughter's voting for the first time. She's 19. But
my daughter's young, so
they are all.
What do they say?
They're all registered. All of her friends, and they're excited. And they're reading the pamphlets, and so I think, what would she have got out of that debate last night? Because it's just such a kind of middle-aged thing. We're all talking about things that matter to people who are, our age and older.
Annabelle had the advantage over the TVNZ first debate just over a week ago of an audience. You were in the audience. I saw you there.
I saw you too.
Well, I saw you first. So
you guys were
touche.
You're actually about a metre apart.
Yeah, we were distant.
Oh, probably 2 because that's social distancing.
Wow, sounds like you guys all had a nice night.
Oh, Ben didn't get invited.
Well, you were experiencing it like you're an ordinary, hard-working New Zealander, Ben, unlike patrician class of Annabelle Lee.
I got invited to the minor leaders debate tonight.
And that one will be exciting because it may not happen, and it may happen, and it may not happen, and it may happen.
The minor leaders debate, Winston Peters, I believe, has a late addition after refusing to take part at first and doing the thing he does kind of every election, which is, no, I won't turn up, maybe I will, no, I won't, not coming, maybe I will.
He won't debate people who aren't in Parliament or something like that.
Well, in the past, I think he said, "I'm not going to mess around with these minions. I'm Prime Minister material. I will only take a stage with the major parties." But this time round, probably some of the minor parties could argue that they don't want to be on the stage with someone who's polling 1%.
1.4.
Well, we don't know that, do we?
It's a vibe, I think.
It's a vibe? Yeah. I'm vibing 1.4.
It's an unofficial vibe.
Mm-hmm. What did you make of it watching from... Were you... Paint us a picture, Ben. Was there Mountain Dew within reach? Were you watching on your laptop screen, on your phone, on a big screen, under the duvet?
I was about to scoff at that, but I actually did I had a 440ml can of Mountain Dew.
40,
and,
yeah. Per section or
no, just
right,
just to get me through the last 2.5 weeks.
We're going to get you one of those helmets that you put the cans in, with the straws, and it's going to have a Gone By Lunchtime branding, and it's going to have like a year's supply of Mountain Dew.
Yeah, I was doing work, so I was sort of flipping between windows, watching it on the old laptop.
It's very multitasking, that having to concentrate on all your hard work and listening to all of that.
Yeah,
well done.
I thought it was much better than the TV1 debate. I think Patrick Gower had a lot to do with that. John Campbell's style of asking questions was very sort of discursive, paint a picture, here are my feelings, how do you respond? Patrick Gower, it was more like a cross-examination. It was, here's a scenario, what do you do? It's Christmas night. What do you do?
Yeah.
Or he was asking yes/no questions. He was ruthlessly keeping them on task and on topic. And so, interestingly enough, I saw Laura Walters, the very good newsroom journalist, said that last week's policy was more about last week's debate was more about policy and ideas. This week's was more about personalities and values. I actually thought the opposite. I thought by drilling into concrete examples, we actually learned a lot more this week than we did last.
That's absolutely true. Having said that, and to some extent in John Campbell's defence, what we had last night, Annabelle, was the incumbent, the Prime Minister, the leader of the Labour Party, walking out with something to prove. We had that studio audience, and we just had more energy, right? There was just more, you could feel the energy in the room, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when you have an audience, you have body language that you can read. You're getting cheered, you're getting booed, you're getting applauses, laughter. So, it's much easier to gauge your performance as you go and correct as needed. So I think it made a big difference, and both of their performances, I think, were stronger and more energised than what we saw at TVNZ. And it's hard when you're the first debate at TV, the first cab off the rank. But I do think that Newshub did a phenomenal job last night. It was a great production.
It was just kind of, I thought, compelling almost from the outset. And I think you're right, Ben, to remind us of the kind of hypothetical that was painted out, that it's Christchurch, there's an outbreak, what do you do, was a way of making it feel less abstracted, given we have been so washed over by all the COVID COVID debate. Any other moments that stuck out for you,
Can I, in defence of John Campbell?
Oh, yeah.
It was just a different style of debate.
Yeah.
You know, his was a simpler kind of format, and last night was, you know, dynamic. It's a different audience, and I think probably both broadcasters play to their audiences. And, you know, the TV one is more conservative, and who knows, it's probably just people like us who are used to having a little bit more fire and energy into a debate. So they're both,
Great point.
They're both great broadcasters, I think. Paddy is, you know, he's really hitting his stride now in terms of his broadcasting, live broadcasting.
It's almost like he knows, he's got all the tricks in the bag, but he knows when to pull the trigger or something, right?
Yeah, I thought Toby did a great job too, just out there for the wahine. You know, she's quick. She knows every policy. She knows those two women inside out. And, the combo, the duo, they were really good.
What did you think of what did you, watching the debate, what were the moments that kind of stuck out for you?
So I was actually just trying to keep up and think, what am I going to say?
Because you were wheeled onto the stage before in the last break.
What am I going to say? What am I going to say?
Yeah.
What is it? So
and you were first up.
I know. And Toby looked at me and I was like, no, she's going to ask me first. And I did. And to be honest, I was being naughty and I didn't turn up to the briefing because I thought I was superior than everyone else. And I was like,
wow.
I think I'll just get there at 6:30. And then I missed the briefing. And then, it's terrible because about 30 seconds before we went, I said to Trish, what's the first thing? And she says, it's the wins. And I was like, so I had to quickly make something up, to be honest. And I saw Toby, she looked at me like, I thought, oh no, she's coming to me. There's not even an example. I can't even copy anyone. So I thought that, like you said, you know, it was a warmer debate. I mean, there was still... My husband watched it from home and he said it was it sounded quite different on the television to Talofa Lava Afa. It sounded quite different watching it on the television because TV is interesting because, you know, it picks up every single small kind of quirk or movement in your face. So he said it was much more combative on the telly, you know, from the tight shots. With, you know, Judith Collins' kind of eyes and her kind of smirks and her kind of dismissiveness towards the Prime Minister. But he also said that she was less kind of passive. She, you know, responded with a bit more fire and think, you know, I didn't really see that in the live debate because you're so far away. So you can only hear it. She
definitely, though, Ardern definitely came out with something to prove, and I wrote this on the site that in the first 10 minutes she interrupted Collins 3 times, which I'm pretty sure is 3 times as many as in the entire first debate. And so from there on in, it was kind of like, well, let's go. And I mean, having watched the absolutely sort of appalling and shameful US presidential debate that afternoon, I found it just. I mean, it might be a bit like if you come out of an incredibly toxic relationship with a psychopath, that after that, you know, you can have a romantic relationship with a sandwich and feel like it's quite good. But it was just, I just found it really buoying, you know, I found it energizing. I thought, actually, this is, for the most part, people are debating in good faith. Those look like 2 human beings there to me. One of the things I thought was interesting is that Judith Collins... we were talking about this a little bit afterwards, Annabelle, but she's just having the time of her life, and she is being herself. And sometimes it's kind of disarming and it's relatable. But a couple of times, like when she was asked about Gloria Vale, she said, "Oh yeah, that's weird, isn't it?" And it was like she was a vox pop or someone who'd been rung up by breakfast radio to be told they'd won a meat pack or something, you know. So, oh yeah, that was. And when she was like, "Would you like to be on the cover of Vogue?" "Oh yeah, wouldn't that be amazing to be on the cover?" You know, it's kind of real, you know.
She is enjoying this campaign. There's no doubt about it, and. You know, she would be good at a party, Judith Collins. You know, she'd be a lot of fun. She's quick and she's funny, and, you know, there is a bit of charm in there. And though, isn't there also the side of her that I think probably lands in a less relatable and lovable fashion, which is the
dear.
Yeah, the
and
dear.
the manners. Manners.
You know, and some of that.
I don't know how you deal with that, though. I was thinking, if I was facilitating, how would you deal with it? Because when in the Māori seats, we don't get that that doesn't happen. We don't get people who treat people like that. And I think probably as broadcasters and the gallery, they don't pick it up like they used to. And I wonder if we were dealing with a man and a woman, would it be different? I think it would be. Can you imagine a male calling Jacinda Ardern dear? They would be slammed.
And that's one of the advantages Collins has had is that I don't think any of the male leaders of Nationals since Ardern became Labour leader have really known how to calibrate their attacks on her, right? Without seeming either patronising or condescending or sort of ineffective. Collins, there will be a certain part of the electorate that sort of, likes, Ardern being put in her place like that, or attempted to be, I suppose. I thought the other thing that was interesting was that Collins opened up a bit more emotionally. I mean, it was probably speaking volumes that some people identified her saying talofa as her speaking from the heart in the first debate. In the second debate, you did start to see that sort of slightly quavering voice and, speaking from a place of kind of real emotion about child abuse, about cancer sufferers.
Really? The real emotion about child abuse?
Yeah, I thought so.
We talked about Judith Collins a bit, Annabelle, but Jacinda Ardern was really good too, don't you think?
I thought so too, and I think she couldn't have had a more perfect opening to the debate because, Paddy put forward a premise, a theory, a scenario, and for her, she had all of her lived experience to draw on in terms of COVID, and that's where we did see her interrupting more and speaking with authority, and I think it's because, it's an area that she knows inside out, and so I think, she came across really, really strong, and particularly in that first part, and that probably buoyed her for the rest of the debate as well. But yeah, I thought she put in a really solid performance. She didn't rise to take, she didn't take the bait. She was authoritative, confident. I was interested at how many times they agreed with each other.
Yes.
But yeah, I thought she put in a solid performance. I was actually surprised to see so many people calling it for Judith because I genuinely thought that Jacinda outperformed her last night.
Mihingarangi Forbes and Ben Thomas, you were both draws, weren't you? I mean, I kind of feel like sometimes there's a really clear winner, and in those cases it's worth saying. But sometimes it's kind of, maybe you made this point, Ben. It was a winner if you were looking. One person could be a winner if you're looking for these things, and the other person a winner if
true.
It's a when you. It's not a running race, It's a more complex. It's more like rhythmic gymnastics.
I think Judith, she could have won it, but for me, it's those moments when she speaks condescendingly and says manners and dear and that it lets her down, and she doesn't need to do that because she's actually, as Jacinda said, a really assertive, strong debater, and when she's being her authentic self, she's great, but when she's getting into the school mum
but what if that
role,
is her authentic self? See, that's the difficulty, right? Like if you're like just unshackle yourself and be yourself, and being yourself is partly being funny and relatable, but also that is, what if that is, it's like be yourself is one of the most terrible bits of advice to give anyone ever, of course.
If speaking down to another woman in leadership is her authentic self, then don't be so authentic. Yeah. Like be good manners instead. That's what I mean.
Okay, yeah.
Be less of yourself if that's yourself.
More of yourself in this bit, and be even more of you. Be sort of 150% of yourself.
And 25%
on this
over
bit.
here. Mm-hmm.
Kia ora, I'm Sophie.
And I'm Simon.
And I'm Alice, and together we host the Spin-Off's food podcast, Dietary Requirements.
Join us each month as we explore a vast culinary landscape, from the gourmet
Ooh la la
to your more hearty taka.
Kiwi onion dip, anyone?
Everything's on the table in Dietary Requirements.
Subscribe wherever you listen to all your other favourite podcasts.
One feature I thought was interesting was the amount of new ground that got covered.
Yes.
And part of this was in areas where we hadn't heard this sort of stuff before. Collins really picked up and ran with the wage subsidy controversy that I think Duncan Grieve was probably the first person to really write about in depth on the spin-off about large companies reporting big profits, having laid off workers and having taken the wage subsidy.
Yeah.
And Collins, I don't think, it didn't seem as if she had come into the debate determined to make a big issue out of that. But seeing the PM a little bit on the back foot, she really went with it, to the point where now she's promising to pass a law to strip the wage subsidy.
A kind of
She's going to
retrospective
go
law.
after
A
them.
retrospective
She's going to
law
go after big business
to
and
expropriate
defend,
private property from big business.
defend the little guys.
Yeah.
It was, which, I mean, I don't know how you would do that. There's no principled way that you could do that.
And to be fair, Jacinda Ardern did say it was immoral. She did say it was a moral outrage, but there was a slight feeling. I thought that was impressive too, and there was also Judith Collins saying that some house prices would need to come down, which is not the sort of thing you necessarily expected you'd hear from a National Party leader
Or
in the
any
21st
mainstream
century.
political
Correct.
leader.
Yes.
If you watch that youth debate, on
Chloe Swarbrick was
Monday
the only
night,
one, right? Yeah.
That's right. When they were asked, "Do you want house prices to come down?" the National and Labour people said, "We want houses to be more affordable." Or what does that? Does that mean lower prices? Well, just more affordable.
But I suppose the thing for Judith Collins is, you're right. There were lots of news lines. There was also Jacinda Ardern backing the Green School, which was a surprise. I thought
National is now committed to building a statue of Kate Shepherd on the
That was
parliamentary
another moment of,
grounds.
Sounds good. Let's do it. It's like Patrick Gower is now
Paul
laying down
Goldsmith.
these members' bills, which are getting signed off one by one.
Paul Goldsmith's getting out the Excel spreadsheet again.
New Plymouth to be the new capital of New Zealand. Oh, yeah, sounds fine. Right, that's done. Another pass.
We're pulling up all the roads to Whanganui. The statue's going in.
But was Judith Collins doing that stuff on the fly? I guess I sort of that's the it's good. Yeah, there was a clarity in some of that because they were a bit more relaxed into it. They weren't equivocating and doing that kind of dissembling circumlocution stuff. But did you sense, Mihi, that Judith Collins was doing some of that on the fly?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, I guess for us is, every issue is a Māori issue. And so when you're talking about the economy or when you're talking about health and Keytruda and all those kinds of things, it's just impossible for Annabelle and I to be listening to those debates without being thinking, but what about? And, those two women know exactly what the cycle or the issues in health are, and they know, and so, she was challenged on whether there was any institutional racism and things like that, and she said no. And, I'm not saying that I wanted to be the facilitator, but had I been the facilitator...
Did you want to be the facilitator?
On those issues, yes, because I feel like they just get let off all the time.
There's a lot of people out there saying Mihi Forbes to facilitate
all
the debates.
I just feel like it's unfair to... I feel like that sometimes those debates, and I'm probably going to get myself into a lot of trouble here, are speaking for middle New Zealand, and I feel like minorities get left out, to be honest. And so for example, last night we heard the leader of the opposition talk about how she's got a family member who's got lung cancer and can't get Keytruda. We know this because Māori are 1.5% more likely to die from lung cancer and are screaming out for the Keytruda drug, which is not funded by Pharmac. But it's funded for melanoma, and you know what the rates are on that? 98% of people who die from melanoma are Pākehā. So you have to just do the math, and people need to be challenged on that because, Paddy can ask, lay down the old Kate Shepherd statue, and I can, and I'm all good with that. That's great. But also lay down some of those really big challenges that would change, which would save lives.
And are you available in 2023 to host a leader debate?
Will I still be in this industry? I'm hoping to be really rich and retire. Well, not really rich.
Well, you could come out of your retirement.
Out of my big tall glass house.
Okay, well, book it in. Book it in. Come via me if you're interested in booking.
You could manage me.
Forbes. Yeah. On debates, and you, Annabelle. The Hui is now 5 out of 7. Is that where you're at? 5 out of 7. You've got Te Tai Hoaru and Te Tai Tonga to go. Particularly interested in Te Tai Hoaru. There was a poll out, Māori TV had a poll, which showed that Adrian Rāwhare is quite comfortably
50 to 30 or something.
Something like that, ahead of Debbie Ngārewa Peka.
But a lot of people undecided.
A lot of undecided.
Yeah,
and hell of a seats to poll, tricky seats to poll.
30% of people undecided, which
so
is remarkable.
The undecided could probably call the election.
So again, we've got that's going to be a great debate. When is that? Next Tuesday?
No, Te Tai Hoaru is on Wednesday.
Next Wednesday?
It's on Tuesday.
Okay, so I think that's one that people should definitely watch because a storming performance from Debbie Ngārewa Peka would, is it's essential to the Māori Party's chances of getting into Parliament.
Those seats are really difficult to poll.
Yeah.
Because, you have the issue of Māori being on the general, Māori being on the Māori roll, and you have to... it's not just make a phone call. You have to make a phone call and then ask them if they're on that, and then so there's a lot of collateral of your phone calls. So a lot of So if you consider Waiariki last time, no one really called it that Tāmati was going to win like that, and he did. So even though I think the polls are great, and everyone loves a poll, I wouldn't. The Māori Party isn't feeling. I think that they'll be just feeling, fine because I think that they're thinking that they're doing well in those seats and they could well be. I think Debbie Ngārewa Peka has been a good leader. I mean, I thought she was going to struggle having John Tamihere to co-leader, but I think she's done she's a diplomat, she's done a really great job. And they've got some great candidates that we've heard in those seats, people that we've never met before and who have been working at the grassroots of those seats and know politics at a grassroots level. So whether they're able to transfer that into Parliament, I'm not sure yet, but they are actually putting up good debates in those seats.
Can I ask you quickly, you had, this week you did Te Tai Tokoro, and on the panel there, the candidates was Billy Teke Jr., who is the co-leader of the Advance Party, and there's some people who argue that he shouldn't be platformed, pointing to the dissemination of conspiracy theories around 5G and all of that. You're the executive producer, Annabelle Lee Mather. How did you tackle a question like that?
Yeah, it was a tough one, and something that Mihi and I discussed a lot over the last few weeks. And to be honest, if the debate had been earlier and within 14 days of the large rally he attended, we probably would have had to cancel him because we were concerned about the health and safety of the other candidates and the kaimahi at TV3. But in
terms of a COVID public health perspective,
health perspective.
Yeah.
And but ultimately, it's election time, and he is a candidate. He has a following, and ultimately, I don't think that excluding Māori who already feel marginalised, and I'm not talking about Billy, I mean the people that follow him, I don't think that really serves democracy well. So it was, it was something that,
we had a criteria and we followed that criteria, it's like in Parliament the last time, and so we went through that. We invited Maki Herbert, who actually in our criteria was ahead of him, and she was unable to make it, so,
and
there was a fair process.
And it's a hell of a challenge when you are moderating a session with someone who comes in with that reputation, Mihi, because you can go one of two ways, or one of probably 25 different ways, but one way to do it is to go head on, right? And to go to say, you are peddling this nonsense, challenge it on it, but then you basically risk starting another fire that is hard to put out.
I think
what do you do? What do you do?
The seats are so different to the other seats because everyone's kind of related. Everyone knows each other's work. There's a real sense of respect as well for the other candidates, even if you don't believe their politics. Or so that's easier for us. For me, it was like, I'm going to treat people with respect until they step out of line. So I wasn't going to have anyone peddling conspiracy theories on our debates, and he didn't. And when he went there, we kind of moved on and we just kept it policy. So, the purpose of the debate is so that people of Te Tai Tokiro can decide who they're going to vote for. And I think they were served well with the debate that happened this week, because they heard about housing and unemployment and suicide and all those kinds of things, and how these people were going to represent them in Parliament.
We had, of course, a poll on Monday night. We had a poll on Sunday and Monday, didn't we? We had research on Sunday, like London buses. You don't have any for 6 weeks, and then 3 come along at once. And they are tracking quite well for the National Party. Ben Thomas still looking a fair distance from having to, what we have to call now a pathway to power. The numbers were in the latest Colmar Brunton poll for TVNZ. Labour 47, National Party 33, ACT 8, Greens 7, and then a whole lot of other parties, including the New Zealand First Party, which is different from the New Zealand First Foundation, on 1%. I mean, you look at those numbers and you could say the momentum's there, you could say the trajectory's there, but there's still some fresh air between Labour, Greens and National ACT.
Yeah, I mean, this is, what are we now, about 3 days out from, or 2 days out from the beginning of
2 days out from
voting.
advance voting opening, yeah.
They think about 60% of votes will be cast before election day this time. So, as Stephen Joyce might have said in the old days, it's not a long runway for National right now. On current trends, they might overtake Labour sort of mid-next year, but that will probably come a little late. Look, there is still a sizable percentage of the vote out there who are National-leaning, who voted National the past, 4 elections, maybe even 5 elections, who could be brought back. Things like Judith Collins' debate performance, where she came across as a more well-rounded, sort of personable, likeable, and, in some ways unlikable to different people kind of person, could convince those people to come back. Some of the policies, like the tax cuts, might convince them to come back. So, you couldn't rule out National.
Calling Gloria Vale weird?
Do the Gloria Vale people vote?
Yes, as a block.
Do they?
By proxy.
That's
what one of them said in an interview, I remember.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
They're like the National Party on the cannabis referendum.
Interesting, the Greens are bouncing back, I think. Had the Green School been closer to the elections, it would have been, I think it's probably going to be okay for them.
Yeah, that kind of was a bit of that kind of just sort of stopped them. That and COVID, they sort of, I mean, one felt a little sorry for them because they were probably the most advanced in their campaign before the Auckland outbreak and then the Green School humiliation.
That's the thing about politics, though, eh?
Yeah.
How many days to the election? 15 or something?
Maybe.
16. And anything, we don't even know. It's like...
It's October the 18th.
Like
there is a COVID outbreak
cloud
in Wellington. What do you do?
The fog is everywhere. Yeah. But who knows what could happen in the next... Today, for goodness sake, anything.
You mentioned the Greens, and I think that's a really, really interesting thing that you kind of, presumably, there are some people who saw Labour on 50-something and thought, oh, okay, I'm safe, my team is safe. I can then, as the Greens have been trying to signal, you can you can pull them to the left. The Justin Giovannetti, who's our politics editor, has interviewed the Green leaders for a piece that is going up in the next day or two, and not to spoiler it, but basically the vibe seems to be that they are arguing, I think I have this right, check the piece to see if I do or don't, that Marama Davidson is basically arguing that we are the party that can give you the Jacinda you want. So it's like, this is, this is the Jacinda that you thought you were going to get. We can, which is an interesting take, right? And markedly different to the strategy that has been followed by the New Zealand First Party, for example, which is all about handbrakes and insurance policies, which are, in my view, not things that people necessarily get excited about voting for. Like, you don't sell a motor car on the
I know that everyone always says, the missing votes and those, but I kind of, it might be just because I've got children who are registered to vote, but I feel like young people are really talking about the elections this time around.
Yeah.
Last night after that debate, my 21-year-old plumbing nephew in the Tron starts texting me about, I've changed my mind, sat through the whole debate. And I'm like, what is this? Why are you not out at the pub, But
my 10-year-old, his takeaway was that Judith Collins is quite funny from watching last night's debate.
Give him the vote.
Give him the vote.
Give him the vote. Make it 10.
Make it 10. Make it 10.co.nz.
I mean, it's young people actually have quite a lot of influence in New Zealand politics, particularly in environmental policy. It seems that pretty much every one of Jacinda Ardern's large environmental initiatives is basically something that a primary school class sent her as letters. Banning plastic bags, banning stickers off fruit. I don't know that underrepresentation is actually as much of an issue as people think.
Just briefly, before we move on to the New Zealand First Party and the very separate subject of the New Zealand First Foundation.
Two separate topics.
Does anyone agree with me that it is baffling that Jacinda Ardern refuses to tell us whether she thinks cannabis should be legalised or not?
Yeah.
I just kind of don't get it. And I feel as though maybe she's entrenched herself now that to change her mind would seem as though she's changing her mind.
I think
but
that's
it's kind of, I mean, look, admittedly on the other side, the National Party, I think it's indefensible that they're whipping one of their MPs to vote a particular way. But I just don't understand. I mean, it's not like you can have an opinion and still say, I respect other people voting differently. I understand that people have different concerns.
Yes, I read something about this in a spin-off article written by Annabelle Lee Mather, actually. Yes.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. And you can pick up, or I can paraphrase you if you like. But I think it was something to do with
Could you do it in her voice?
Prime Minister. Okay, we'll get down here because she did get home at 2 a.m. So she's got her Barry White voice on today. About, that... No, actually, you say it because I can't remember exactly what.
I think I said something about. Well, no, I think she isn't saying which way she's going to vote because she's concerned about alienating, the Conservative voter that she might be able to pull over, and that's fine. But I think to pretend that it's because, or to imply, which is how I read her explanation, that she was worried that somehow by saying which way she would vote, it would unduly influence voters. I just think it's a long bow to draw, and I think it kind of, does a disservice to voters that, that whole country would start smoking weed because Ja Rule does it.
She talked about. Has she talked about which way she's going to go in euthanasia?
Yeah, because she's on the record on that because I think she's voted in Parliament in support of it.
Well, that's the thing. They're on the record for everything they voted in Parliament, so it's not like it's a secret.
I mean, she's on the record as saying that she would suggest that New Zealanders eat less meat for health reasons now.
Both of them.
So it seems a little strange to carve out cannabis, which is a health issue. The way that it's been set out in this government bill sponsored by her Minister of Justice.
Farming is a sacred cow in New Zealand, and no politician would talk about reducing their meat intake like that, I think, 10 years ago. And I think there is a real shift and change.
Did you think they were a little Twice a week.
Twice a week, I find that hard to
I'm
believe.
like,
Except
that's me like,
they then
that's
discovered
like
that
me
fish
a
is an
day.
animal.
That would be
I'm like twice a day.
There'll be Monday.
Right now,
That's-
Annabelle Lee is chowing down on the carcass of a possum.
Yeah.
Possum, gross.
All the time.
Um,
Delicious.
No, I'm two a week.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What about fish?
Is maybe once a week.
Once a week.
The bit
See-
that confused me though was when Judith said, what I would say is that if you're eating meat, make sure it's New Zealand meat. And I was like, is there another
not a
kind?
lot of
Is
imported
there?
meat.
What have I been buying? Where's mine from?
My South
Sometimes
African
you
meat.
get
I'm so
Australian meat and
confused.
countdown, don't you?
Yeah, but it says Australia and you say no.
Yeah, and you have
Most-
to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They were both seemed shocked to discover that fish are animals, and
And that they were in danger
and
because no one's talked about the fishing industry in the
week,
debates.
Last week, when they were both on the West Coast at the same time, I think between them they ate
video
several
pics off fishing boats.
dozen whitebait sandwiches. You know,
Yes, I saw
and
that.
my theory on this is that they do probably both order fish quite a lot because that's the kind of thing you'd be advised to do. You know, it's like you go to a lot of functions if you're
It's a
the
very
leader of a political
Greyland thing to
party.
do.
and it's kind of like I'll have the fish. You know, I'll have the fish.
When you
Yeah.
have to
Isn't
eat
it?
5 times a day like those guys.
Yeah.
Turn up to a function.
That's what I would do if I was the leader of a major political party. I would order the fish.
Is that a policy?
It's
On the
more a
fly?
philosophy.
Is it a policy on the fly?
Look,
And a promise?
I'll write a think piece about that later on today. If I
You know
can
what?
come
You know
up
what
with some
John
time.
Key used to do to stay trim on the election.
Did he order the
trail?
fish?
He ate half of the meal that he was given.
That's a good
As a
idea.
rule.
As a rule,
Interesting.
He would at every function that he went to, he would eat
I
half the
reckon
food
New
he was given.
Zealanders should eat half of the meals that they prepare for themselves. Probably the issue is the portion sizes, eh?
But not when you go to America, which we used to be able to do. And the portion sizes are like 3 times the size of the portion sizes.
Yeah.
I feel as though we're straying off topic slightly.
Okay, here we are.
On Monday, we had this cool day.
But
I kind
fish are endangered,
Yeah.
and we should think about fish more. And, what about the Kumadex, the sanctuaries,
Kia ora.
all those kinds of things?
Kia
No
ora.
one's talking about that in this election. I think it's too much of a hot topic.
The Greens talked about it a bit, but the Greens, I don't know, some of their policies are a bit weird. The kind of the kind of marine sanctuary, protected water stuff will be 30%. You're like, 30% is just not. Is that really a policy that resonates with people as an idea? I don't know. I just feel like some of the framing of some of the Greens policies. They talked
Definitely,
about it.
my
they
friends.
talked about it. They talked about it in a.
Well,
in a
actually, my
policy
other
works
mother,
as well.
Sandra Lee, she talked about it on breakfast recently
Did
and
she?
very passionately, and it was, man, she made a lot of sense, and it hasn't really been picked up too much because I think people are afraid of getting into the fish industry.
If only she knew people who worked in
Uncle
television.
Winston gets really angry if you talk about the fish.
He doesn't
like
like
it.
the cameras on boats and all that. No, yeah, he's
Just the bad fishing techniques.
That was a segue,
Oh.
by the way. Did you
Oh.
see what I did there?
New Zealand
So
first.
I picked it up, and then
He
I'll
probably
throw
eats
it to
fish
you,
quite a bit.
and then you go, and then you go like keep going. with
okay.
it.
All right.
I'd say Winston's a fish twice a week guy.
I had some delicious gurnard the other day at
love gurnard. It's so
up at
underrated.
Tutakaka at the just down on the jetty there. There's the local angling club. Oh, just beautiful. Caught that day. So highly recommended. I think it's called the Whanga. It's the Whangarei angling club, but it's in Tutakaka there. Highly recommended. On Monday, it was an exciting day. I kind of felt like the energy of the campaign surged a bit, and it was a bit like my theory is the election gods were going, we've run out of material, we need to have a bit of throwback stuff. And so they looked at the campaigns gone past, and they plucked out the Nikki Hager thing happened. Judith Collins said some pretty objectionable things about Nikki Hager, and that was very 2014. There was the 11th hour injunction that the Advance Party pulled over their inclusion in the Newshub debate, which is being recorded tonight and aired on Saturday morning. That was very much, again, like 2014. And then we had this fantastic set piece, which was a throwback to when was the election? When was it 2008? When Winston Peters got caught up in the SFO thing and Helen Clark, and then he stood down, but all the details are in his boot if you're interested. And we had this set piece at 5 p.m. where the Serious Fraud Office were to release a statement announcing their decision following their investigation into the New Zealand First Foundation and party funding.
Brackets no relation.
Which has no relation. Well, they didn't say that. Anyway, and Winston Peters was to give a press conference at precisely the same time, on the dot at 5 p.m. He, was literally standing there for 3 minutes beforehand, staring at the clock, ready to go so he could hit the mark on 5 p.m. And this followed some action in the High Court where the individuals involved sought name suppression, and indeed the New Zealand First sought to delay the Serious Fraud Office announcement until after the election. It's quite interesting, the judgments are up there. And Ben, my question for you really is, clearly this was a total exoneration of... I should say, this is badly introduced, I should say that the SFO announcement was that they are charging 2 individuals in relation to their inquiry into the New Zealand First Foundation and party funding. We are not aware of who those 2 individuals are, and their names are suppressed, but we do know that they are neither MPs nor ministers nor candidates nor staffers for the New Zealand First
Party.
Nor
current party members.
Which... Winston Peters, as it pains to point out, is very separate from the New Zealand First Foundation, and therefore they were all completely exonerated.
Yes, I mean, mystery surrounds the identity of the 2 people who were related to the investigation into the New Zealand First Foundation. It could have been that the Serious Fraud Office's investigation revealed that 2 paperweights were missing from the foundation and that cleaners have been taken into custody. We just don't know. We do know that it was nothing to do with Winston Peters, who was probably shocked to discover that there was an organisation with a name so similar to his. When the SFO press release came out, he was probably wrongly CC'd into some emails by mistake. I mean, this is, in a way, it doesn't matter because this is the end. They're at 1% on the poll. I think there were 2 polls, 1% and 2%. They're finished. They're, in 2.5 weeks, this will just be, a kind of follow-up for a slow news day for some reporters. It is remarkable that the fundraising vehicle, institution for the sitting Deputy Prime Minister of the country, has been found to be involved in fraud.
Has been charged.
Or has been charged. Sorry. Yes. And it's facing allegations.
The New Zealand First Foundation has gone through the New Zealand First Party for some reason, which I apologise, put me in mind of the man who said he was John Banks' son. And John Banks said, that man has nothing to do with me. And the man he was pointing at looked more like John Banks than John Banks did. Is there some sense, Annabelle Lee Mather, in which this is a Hail Mary? Like, in a weird way, this gives Winston Peters something to leverage on. 1% in the polls. Struggling. That at least now he can... has a hand to play. It's not a great hand, but he can, try and play some Mazir hand or play the victim. He can invoke James Comey of the FBI and come out guns blazing. I don't know. I mean,
I think playing something. A Mazir hand is a great analogy, and he's gone into persecution mode, and it's if nothing else, it's turned the cameras back towards him, and I see that he was happy to make himself available for the AM show and breakfast and the announcement. So I think, again, as he always does, he's making the best of a bad situation, but whether or not it's salvageable this time seems highly unlikely.
Mihi, is there some incredible last act, some Phoenix-like...
Unfortunately, I haven't had enough fish this week, and my fish oils, lack of fish oils, have switched my brain off, and I didn't listen to any of that.
Okay.
So, sorry. Next.
Mihi Forbes has just sent me an urgent message that she needs to go and clean her shoes, which I understood became sodden in an incident I've just had a lawyer's letter, and Annabelle Lee Mather has instructed me that I'm not at liberty to discuss what happened to the shoes. Annabelle, do you want to say
Two
anything?
unnamed
Do you want to say anything
individuals
before we-
with name suppression were spotted at the viaduct last night.
Shoes.
The Hui Foundation.
I have no idea what's going on in this podcast anymore. Where are we?
Just some snake skin shoes.
Okay, we're going to go and have some fish. Love you lots. Thanks, members. Thanks, Tina Tiller. You're the greatest. Thanks to Folk
Don't
Electric.
eat too much fish.
Thanks to Mihingarangi Forbes. Always absolute privilege to have you with us. Thanks, Annabelle Lee, for making it. And thanks, Ben Thomas, also for making it. I'm Toby Manhire. We'll catch you soon. Bye.
Are you curious about how business can be better? I'm Simon Pound, and I host Business is Boring, a podcast where I kōrero with some of the most interesting people in entrepreneurship, commerce, and making things happen. Tune in to Business is Boring every Tuesday, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with Spark Business Lab.
Do you find it hard staying optimistic with all the financial news in the media? I'm Bernard Hickey, and on my podcast, When the Facts Change, I'm here to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of economics in Aotearoa. So join the conversation every Friday on When the Facts Change, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with KiwiBet.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.